So you just heard the kids singing, and aren't they great? They're so fun. You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not shout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. Right? Isn't it kind of an odd thing as people of faith that we tell our children that in order to get presents from Santa, they have to be good all the time? Now, I get it as a parent, right? We want our children to kind of live up to a certain standard. But, the truth is, like, none of us are all that great. And what happens if we're not good? Santa's gonna put coal in your stocking. Well, just so y'all know, Walmart sells candy coal now. It's little pieces of chocolate shaped like coal, and my kids get it every year in their stocking. None of us is all good. None of us is all nice. None of us is all naughty either. And the truth is, right, the thing about Christmas is really the concept of grace, right? So the Jesus story, his birth story, doesn't actually start with Mary and Joseph. Luke tells us that the story actually starts with a man named Zechariah and a woman named Elizabeth. Now, what we know about them is that Zechariah was a priest and Elizabeth was his wife. Zechariah was chosen for the most important duty in the temple. His name was drawn by lots to be the one that would go into the Holy of Holies, into God's room, God's space, the space where God dwells, and that he would go in. Now, this was such a dangerous job that oftentimes they would tie a rope to the foot of the priest and put a bell around the priest so that if something were to happen to him, they would hear the bell stop ringing and they could pull him out with the rope, right? That's crazy. And so he gets this special opportunity to meet God face to face. Now, the other thing we know about Zechariah and Elizabeth is that Luke describes them as righteous. Now, the word righteous has a lot of churchy connotations, but the best way to talk about righteousness is that they were conformed to God's standards, right? They lived not to their standards, but to God's standards. And it says that they were blameless or without fault when it came to the way that they lived, the way that they walked with God daily. And Luke tells us that together they followed God's commands and they followed God's regulations, meaning their lives were put together in such a way that in the way that God would order them, that what they willed was God's will, what they did was what God wanted them to do. And so all that boils down to is they were getting it right. They were doing the right things in the right way. They would be on the nice list, not the naughty list. And the last thing we know about them is this. We know one thing about Elizabeth other than the fact that she is Zechariah's wife. She was barren. She was having fertility issues. The very thing that for a woman in that time would have made her complete, whole, would have given her purpose, would have given her protection as she grew older and she became a widow. A son was the very thing she did not have. The thing that culture said you had to have in order to be considered blessed by God, Zechariah and Elizabeth did not have. They had done it all right, and yet they had still come up short on Christmas. See, the thing is, doing it all right doesn't always get you what you want. It doesn't always get you what you think you need, right? Because doing it all right, getting it all right is actually not the point of faith. Living in God's way, encountering God, living in the presence of God and ordering your life with God is what the life of faith is all about, right? And yet, right in the moment that Zechariah has the highest honor, right? Going into the temple, the Holy of Holies, this is actually the moment that doing all the right things prepared him for. Because in the Holy of Holies, Zechariah will have a godly encounter. And if they had not lived in God's order, if they had not lived with God's way, if they didn't know how to live holy in step, walking step for step with God, he may have never even gotten the opportunity to go into the Holy of Holies. It was in that space, in the Holy of Holies, that Zechariah encounters God. And he finally receives the very thing that they had hoped for so long. The angel tells him, you will have a child and you will name him John, and he will be a delight and a joy to all. And he will not drink wine, but he will be filled with the Holy Spirit. Right? And what they wanted was a baby. What they got was even better. Their child would not only be holy or set apart, he would be set apart, but he would bring the entire world joy and delight, not just them. He would be a catalyst for folks to change their way of living, to be more righteous. And he would live under the power and the strength of the Holy Spirit. And their child would ultimately prepare them and the world for the one who the entire world had been waiting for, Jesus. It was in their waiting. It wasn't in their trying to earn God's love or as a benefit for being good, right? But it was really because they did the work that they could encounter the holy and receive the gift. That they were submitting and aligning their lives to God's way all along, that they were able to experience the gift of this child as a blessing, and not just for themselves, but one they could share with the world. You know, so often this faith stuff we do, we think we need to do it to make God happy so that God, like Santa Claus, will give us what we want. It's not really about doing it good or getting it right, but instead, are you allowing the Holy Spirit to guide you? Are you allowing God to teach you and to help you line your life up with God's way? Are you learning daily to walk step for step with God so that maybe you could experience the blessing of sharing God with the world, just like Elizabeth and Zechariah did through John? I want to read you these words of the angel one time so that you can hear for yourselves the blessing that they received. But the angel reassured him, "Don't fear. Your prayer has been heard. Elizabeth, your wife, will bear a son by you. You are to name him John. You're going to leap like a gazelle for joy, and not only you, but many will delight in his birth. He'll achieve great stature with God. He'll drink neither wine nor beer. He'll be filled with the Holy Spirit from the moment he leaves his mother's womb, and he will turn many sons and daughters of Israel back to their God. He will herald God's arrival in the style and strength of Elijah. He will soften the hearts of parents to children and kindle devout understanding among hardened skeptics. He'll get the people ready for God." Are you ready for God? Is your life lined up that you might experience and encounter today? Make sure you like and share and subscribe to this channel so that others might hear this message of hope. And happy VlogVent. We have made it all the way to the halfway point, day 13. We are counting down to Christmas now. Love you guys, and see you again tomorrow.